Hello, everybody. This is Charlie Sandlan, and I've got a hell of a show for you today. We're going to talk to Eden Marryshow. Well, not only is Eden a former student of mine, but he is truly one of the most inspirational human beings I have ever met. He has been working as an actor for well over a decade in both film and television. He can now add Broadway to his credits, making his Broadway debut in the hit show Inc., which ran last year. And he is also an award-winning filmmaker, having won the Grand Jury Prize for Best Director at the American Black Film Festival in 2018 for his movie Bruce, which he wrote, produced, starred in, and directed. We're going to talk about how he made that happen. We're going to talk about acting, about art, about how he uses failure as a motivator. And I think we're all going to learn something. So let's get to the show, shall we? Put your phone in your pocket. Creating Behavior starts now. And hello, my fellow daydreamers. This is Charlie Sandlan. You're listening to Creating Behavior. So I've been down in Guatemala now, 63, 64 days, and I have never eaten better in my entire adult life. I'm telling you. Trish's mom, my mother-in-law, Carmen Barillas, has been cooking dinners every single night. I mean, chicken stews, lasagnas, pastas, meatloaf, empanadas, tostadas. I mean, she's just been unbelievable, and I just don't know what the hell I'm going to do when I get back to New York City because Trish does not cook. I am the cooker in the family. I think Trish is allergic to the kitchen, but she does clean like a beast. I got her a Dyson for her birthday, and you would have thought that this came down from God Almighty himself. She took pictures with it, she caressed it, she holds it close to her heart. So we are compatible in that way, but I'll tell you, I just have never eaten better, and it's going to show on my waistline. But that being said, let's just get to the show, shall we? This is a great interview. You might even need a pen and a paper because sometimes Eden will just say something that you're like, fuck, I got to write that down. So here's Eden. So welcome, Eden Marryshow. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing fantastic, actually, Charlie.
I would expect you to say nothing less than that. Yeah. You're always doing great. That's why I love you so much, man. I know I said this to you off the audio here, but you are the reason why I've started this podcast. And we did that talk back for the studio, and what you were just saying about moving forward and risking something and putting yourself out there. I had to face my own hypocrisy, and I'm doing this because of you. And so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, man. Well, I also said offline, I guess, was that some of my debt has been repaid then.
Yes, just a small bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, I wanted to get you on here because I just think you're a remarkable human being, and I just think your story is inspirational. And there are a lot of people out there that are starting out their careers right now in these times, and or have been grinding it out for years. And you get to these points where, like, do I continue? Do I not continue? How do I, move myself forward? And you've lived a life of example here, an artistic life of example. You started out as a teacher, right? A paraprofessional.
I was a paraprofessional. Yeah, so I was an assistant teacher.
P256.
P256.
10 years, a decade.
I was there for 10 years, yeah. So I was there from 18 to 28. There was 1 2-month, 3-month kind of hiatus where, like, when I was 20, I might have just turned 21, but I was like, that's it. I'm going hard. I'm going to do this acting thing. I'm going to, like, make movies. And yeah.
Well, life takes over sometimes.
Yeah, so I go out there, and I'm public access was kind of the only avenue you had to, like, make things really independently at that time. So me and my boys in the neighborhood, we made like 3 like movie of the week kind of deals. We would put on public access.
But because
where
you're spending 10 years in the New York City public school system, but you wanted to be an actor. So how did you get from 10 years as a paraprofessional in the New York public school system to like jumping off the cliff, saying goodbye to that life, and just saying I'm banking on myself and my talent?
Well, I think it was the 2 things. 3 things. One, I kind of had the seed in the back of my mind, right? I never gave up on it completely. There was always this thing I was kind of, and I might have thought I gave up on it, but it would always kind of pop up. Because I always believed in like the kind of Disney thing, I always was wishing on a star, and I always believed in dreams. And I was the type of kid that would watch the end of the Disney movie, like Aladdin, and watch Tinkerbell like hit the, go over the Buena Vista sign. Like I was kind of obsessed with it. I was like, yeah, man, that's a real thing. And I was always telling my kids, my students, which we all call them our kids, that dreams were real and dreams were possible. And, the first step was believing in them and that you could make them come true. And then, I realized, we were talking about this earlier, I realized I was being a hypocrite. And I realized that they might not have many examples of that. And I've read a lot, and you realize that part of this is having an example. It's monkey see, monkey do. Right. So humans operate off of mirror neurons, right? So it's literally like the reason why we've evolved so quickly is because we could see. We don't have to have all of that information given to us through genes. Like we have an ability to watch another human do something and mirror it. So I started to realize like, oh yeah, well they don't have many examples of it. And the way that I could show them that it was possible was if I was to leave and to do it. Man. So that was in my mind. And then with the dreams that one day they would contact me. I didn't know that Instagram would be a thing or Facebook would be a thing, but I thought that one day they would see me in the street or call me on the phone and be like, yo, Marryshow, man, you said it. Like you said you were going to do it and you did it and I believe in it. And I think the real big thing that pushed me to do that was I had a student, Peanut, who we talked about earlier. So about a week after her 18th birthday, I was driving in to work with my dad, actually. And he's on the phone with our really great friend, Cheryl Jones, who's like a big sister. And I saw my dad's face change. And he was like, I think I just remember him saying like Latina's been, and I don't think I remember what happened after that. All I knew was something in my heart, like something in my spirit shifted. And I was like, oh, she's not here. She's dead. Like she's not on this physical plane anymore. And I was really stoic. Like really stoic.
Yeah, she was shot, wasn't she?
Like people
is that what happened?
She was, yeah. So she was shot. She was shot coming home from braiding her cousin's hair in front of near the Redfern Projects in Far Rockaway. Just caught in like a drive-by kind of deal, just like caught. I knew in that moment she was dead. I was very just like everybody around me was crying. And I think people were trying to figure out like what's going on with me because they knew how close we were. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a Libra and I try to balance things out or whatever. I was in complete shock, And then,
but that was the inciting moment that kind of just catapulted you into the rest of your life, right? I mean, it's just a huge motivating force, your relationship and your commitment to her and to her name, what she stood for.
Yeah. I just, the thing with Peanut was I would get this thing called release time, where as a paraprofessional, they wanted you to get college credits so you could eventually become a teacher, which honestly was never my goal, because I knew if I became a teacher and I had my own classroom, I would never leave. At least as an assistant teacher, my word wasn't always the final word. So that was kind of like my fail-safe mechanism. So shoot. So she would always tell me, she would always be like, yo, Marryshow, where you going? She would get upset that I was leaving for the day, because, you know, I'd have a half day on Wednesday. And I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to make movies. And she was like, you know, you're gonna make movies someday. You're gonna be famous. You're gonna be like on TV. And I would say, you know, not believing, honestly. But I'll say, yeah, one day, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And she would always say, like, I believe you. And it was kind of like a ritual that we had, you know.
So you made a promise to her, really?
I made a promise. I made a vow. If this was acting, yeah, and I was in Charlie Sandlan's class right now, I made a fucking vow.
Well, how'd that vow take you to realizing? How'd that vow take you to realizing that you wanted to take 2 years of your life and train? You know, because a lot of actors don't do that, right? And but you did.
I think it was just the idea of, like, one, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure the whole world knew who she was, and that she was a person who lived. That was a big motivator for me. And I wanted to get great. I had this kind of drive to be great at what I was doing, because then I could prove to her and I could prove to my kids that that dreams were real. So that was always kind of the motivating force. And then when, you know, I was in a scene study class for about a year, which was also, no, it was about 2 years, which was awesome. Sasa, and it was also too, my partner Sasa was, you know, she was at the program, and her kind of motivation the whole time was like, we would go into these not directing act, what do you call them? The casting director workshops.
Yeah, like this one-on-one.
And yeah, Sasa's pure objective was just like, I want to know what the best training is. That was the only reason she was going there, to ask casting directors this. So she was paying money, and the studio that kept coming up over and over and over again was Maggie Flanagan's studio. So, and then I started to, you know, you run up. My agents were actually like, don't do it. Like, you have this like rawness, this kind of this believability or this naturalness to
right.
you.
And training is going to fuck that up. I love when people say that. Yeah, it's going to take away your spontaneity and who you are. And
yeah. But I start, you know, and I was reading a lot. I was reading like Chekhov. I was reading Stella Adler. I was reading, you know, I got like Elia Kazan. Like, I was reading all of these cats, and I just was just like, yeah, man. What's going to happen when I'm in a situation and I can't fall back on the naturalness? What's going to happen when I run into a problem? Any kind of pursuit that's worth pursuing, there's a craft to it. And I was like, I have to be a craftsman. I have to learn how to do this. And I'm way more interested in not reinventing the wheel, and going and being taught.
Well, how did training change your? Well, I mean, you put 2 years in, you trained, you busted your ass, you get out. Like, how has your view of acting and your craft changed over the last, 6 years, 7 years?
Really, it's been a long. Oh, I think that. It's funny because I think you have big leaps when you first jump into something. And then like the growth is kind of incremental. But the cool thing about that is that you're kind of like looking at the minutia and looking at these little things. And it's like, you can just make like this one little adjustment, and I get as excited as I would have about like the huge leap that I might've taken 6 or 7 years ago. So I think that that's what I'm more focused on, is kind of the deliberate practice. Okay, what's this one thing that I'm trying to get better at? Am I trying to look at a scene for like 10 minutes and I got to go in for an audition. I'm going to look at this scene for 10 minutes and I have to make choices. I have to have a point of view. What's that going to look like? Those are things that I wouldn't have done earlier on because I just didn't have that. I just didn't have that skill set. The fundamentals. We're talking about
the artistry.
So we were talking about The Last Dance before we jumped on the podcast, right? And to me, that's all Jordan says. And that's all his trainer said. He was like, they worked on the fundamentals. They worked on the fundamentals of basketball. They worked on the fundamentals of his body every day. They were talking about, like I was listening to this podcast with Tim Grover, his trainer, and he was just talking about how those kind of crazy ballet kind of moves that he did on the basketball court, he never practiced. He practiced the fundamentals. So for me, as I kind of like translate that as an actor, it's working again on fundamentals. It's working on, even working on like the 5 questions, right? The 5 things that you ask yourself. It's working on actions, working on all of these little things that people take for granted. They just jump in a script and they're just like, okay, this is my character, whatever. It's working on those fundamental things. It's preparing so that once you get on stage, you're not thinking. You can just, and that's how I translate it in my mind. It's just like, you can just be free. And I've heard it a million different ways. Like once you get on stage, you just let go and forget the homework. Right. And I feel like for me, it's easy for me to see it through athletics because Jordan gets on the court and he can let it all go and he could do these crazy things.
That's when your talent comes to the surface, right? You master the fundamentals. Yes. There's second nature in you so that when you get on that field, get on stage, get in front of the camera, then it's time to fucking rip, man. Like, let's go. Let's improvise.
Yes. And I think that a generation of basketball was hurt because one, we didn't have all these other outlets. Nobody ever wants to, and this is like kind of, I think becoming an obsession in my life and kind of a mission in my life where I'm obsessed with like failure and showing the fuck ups because people just think it's a ready-made product and people always want to fall back on the fact that, oh, he just had talent. No, man, that's disrespecting this man.
That's right.
That's just disrespecting anybody who's achieved any level of greatness. The fact that you think that, oh, they were just giving this guy. Yes, of course they were giving talents. You can point to 10. You can point to 10 basketball players that had more. I could point to Derek Coleman, who, if anybody knows basketball, I could say physically, I think was more gifted than Michael Jordan. But there's just a different. His dedication, Michael Jordan's dedication.
Nobody worked harder.
His dedication to his
nobody
craft.
Worked harder.
That's it. And so. Yeah, so for me, I'm just like I look at this situation. I look at this man on the basketball court, and he's just able to release and be himself and play full out.
That's what you want
because he, So yeah, man. So that's what I feel like craft can get you, and yeah, you can get over. You get over for 1 year, you get over for 2 years, you can get over 3 years, you can get over for a decade. It's coming.
It will. You'll be doing something else at some point.
Yeah. And also too, there's a respect. There's a respect that you won't have for what you're doing. Yeah. Like there's that you will never be fulfilled.
I agree with you 100%.
Like you won't. There's no way, and you have to, again, going back to this. And the thing is, people keep seeing like these finished products and they're just like, oh, I just want this. Like, I'm just going to do this. Like, yeah, I'm just going to like replicate De Niro's performance in Taxi Driver or.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Give that a shot.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like you can mimic, but the foundation won't be
hackish. There. Those are the hacks. And that's, certainly not who I'm interested in. I know it's not what you wanted to be. You did, you wanted to be an artist and you understood that. So, I mean, all right. So you get out of school and, you start, you're working, man. You got a recurring role in Jessica Jones. You book in New Amsterdam. You great little spot in White Girl, that great little indie film, right? The Normal Heart, which was a great adaptation of that play.
I remember I worked with Victor Villahauser on that part for The Normal Heart, and
great coach.
In retrospect,
Great teacher.
I mean, next level. And the funny thing about that part was, it was like, I think I had 3 lines. But again, in retrospect, I went so hard on that part and working with Victor. I remember, because you don't want to play, nobody wants to play a villain, right? And I feel like people could look at this part as like it was a villainous part, because I was the person who the character's partner dies of AIDS during, when there was like all of this hysteria, and I, put the body in a bag and bring it out to the front and get money in exchange for giving this guy his partner, his deceased partner, in a bag. And I remember talking about craft, and again, doesn't matter how big or small the part is. I was like, my crafting around it, what we came to was the idea that I had a Christmas tree, like I had the Christmas tree in the house until late January. Oh, no. It was early January, and I was getting it ready for sanitation, but we'd already had the Christmas tree for 2 months, and it had all of these leaves, all these branches on it that would stick you, and I'm trying to stuff it into the bag, and it was pissing me off.
What an idea.
That was the crafting that I bought to it. It's like, I'm using this human body and I'm stuffing it into this bag like a Christmas tree, a couple of weeks after Christmas. And I remember telling Maggie that, because I was in school at the time. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fear in it, but there's also a lot of fun in working and pounding on the craft. And there's something about human beings needing a pursuit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fear in it, but there's also a lot of fun in working and pounding on the craft. And there's something about human beings needing a pursuit and needing a passion that, like, helps with fulfillment.
Yeah.
Fulfillment. Well, I made up a word.
So I want to talk about Bruce, because it's such a great story, what you accomplished. I mean, this is a movie that you wrote, you directed, you produced, you starred in. You got it into 25 cities, a national release. You won Best Director at the American Black Film Festival in 2018. Like, how the hell do you make something like that happen? Everybody says, "Oh, I want to write a film. I need to do something. I got this idea." But I mean, like, you did.
Yeah, I think the first step was, everybody says that, but people are most of the time too scared to fail. So for me, what helped me was I've written a script called Peanut with my boy Charles C. Neal, who was kind of dedicated to Latina, to Peanut, my student. And we had a bunch of meetings. I had a bunch of meetings in LA. I was sleeping on my boy Carlton's couch, who is a Maggie Flanagan alum. And
Carl Bird,
my man, just had a baby. Let's get it. Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I had these meetings and they got canceled, and I felt like a victim, and I didn't like feeling like a victim. So I called Cecil on the phone. I'm just like, we had an idea at the same time, which was we should make Hitting 30, which turned out to be Bruce. And anytime somebody has a similar, like, anytime that happens to me, I'm like, oh, that's something from the other side saying, do that thing, which is the reason why I'm making like this quarantine film now, which I guess we could talk about a little bit. But so I had like $2,500 in the bank, and the idea was just like, these people aren't going to, they don't care that I went to film school. They don't care about anything. Like, LA is just different. Like, in terms of, like, I'm from Brooklyn, so I keep my word usually. Then I like that. Like, they cancel meetings. I just wasn't used to that. So I was like, I got to make something to show these people that I know what I'm doing. So we had this script called Hitting 30 that me and my boy Jesse wrote like 5.5 years earlier, that had gotten slammed by a few friends. I mean, they tore it up, and it was a 143-page first draft. I didn't think it was that bad at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But again, it needed work, but I just didn't feel like it was constructive criticism. So But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in retrospect, if I went back and read emails, I'd be like, oh, you know what? No, actually, it was. I don't know. So it's like, let's make that. We have that. We wrote it as a low budget kind of featured film. We had $2,500 in savings. Not really savings. We had $2,500, period. So and what I learned at Girgis's workshop that he did at Stephen Al Girgis's workshop that he did at Maggie's was he said he gives himself deadlines. So he was like, the way he gets himself to work sometimes is he will have written no pages, but will tell his friends that he's reading he wants them to read a couple scenes this weekend or in 2 weeks. And he was like, actors act. Actors be acting. So actors always going to want to act. So they'll show up and then you can keep yourself accountable. Because some of us do have that kind of like internal accountability thing where they can be accountable to themselves. And then others of us have to be accountable to others. Like if you're just like, oh, I'm going to do this, then it's like, oh shit, yeah, I got to do this. So it was one of those. Came back home, called everybody up. Ismail Reyes actually has photos of it where I just got a bunch of my Maggie people, my Maggie family. We sat it's about 15 of us sitting in the apartment on the floor, on chairs, on tables. And we read this 143-page first draft. And then at the end of it, I said, next month, we start shooting. And that was it. And
were you planning on saying that, or did this come to you in a moment where you're just like, what, fuck this?
No. Once we did the thing, once we decided to shoot it, I was like, okay, this is how it's going to go. So I was like, okay, we're going to make this thing now. And then I had a month. So, I was doing all the pre-production. I have this isn't for this thing, but there's this book. I always keep this book that I got from the Board of Ed. And then when I work on something, this is like all the pages and stuff, all the prep that I do. Because if I was going to act in it, I knew that I had to do a lot of prep before, so I didn't have to think as much on set. So I could just refer to my notes, all the kind of like script breakdown and all of the things that I did. Then I got Sasha Lewis, who was also in my Maggie's class, and he was talking about making films. And I was like, hey, man, I think you can help out. I thought I was helping him out. I'm like, oh, come on set. And then he was like, yo, I have some equipment. If you want to check it out, I go to his place, man. He's got like a fucking mini production studio. So he's got like equipment there. And then my boy Juan, who's a really great DP, he agreed to come in and do it. We had been talking about it for years. So it was this 3-man crew. So don't let anybody tell you need this, you need that. It comes a point where you just have to make it. And there also comes a point where, if you're willing to wait the time to get that money, to get the $2.5 million, then everybody operates differently. Like I couldn't. I needed to make this film. So $2,500, friends, family, right? So if you look at the credits, you'll see there's like 25 assistant directors, because anytime somebody came to act, they were slating and they were doing other stuff and helping out. And then we got the dailies, and Gene Pope, who's also a Maggie alum, watches. He was just like, he plays my dad. And he was like, he was like, you mind if I see some dailies? And I was like, okay. I was like, cool, man. Because he enjoyed what he was seeing on set. So I show him the dailies, and he's like, I want to put some money into this. It's like, I want to get my editor, Maria, to edit it. And if I, like the cut, if we work on a cut, then I'll pay for all of post-production. So what you see on the screen.
Did your jaw drop? Were you just like, what?
Yeah, I think it was the
you want to do what?
Yeah, it was like, it was weird because a big part of me was kind of like, what? Like what you're saying right now. And then the other part of me was kind of just like figuring out how all of this works. It was just like, yeah, people don't jump. For some reason, people don't get on the train at the train stop. They have to jump on a moving train. That's what I realized. I was like, the only way this happens is because somebody sees that I'm actually doing something and not talking about it. I'm being about it. And people want to help people like that. And it doesn't matter necessarily, Bruce is not the greatest movie ever made. It isn't. That's fine. That's another reason that helped me make it, was because I realized, I was like, oh yeah, man, this could be a piece of shit. And the minute that I got comfortable with it being the potential of it being a piece of shit, I could allow myself to make it. And the only reason I was able to do that was because I had, with this film, had a growth mindset. So I try to tell everybody about this book, Carol Dweck, Mindset. I learned it from this dude, Tom Bilyeu. And it's basically these two mindsets: a fixed mindset, and then there's this thing called the growth mindset, which is that you believe you can get better at something. And the idea was just like, the minute I got past the fact that this will be the only thing I ever make in the whole world, blah, 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 and I was just like, oh no, I have to make something to get better. This is not the end.
Have to. That's how I feel about this podcast. I think this could be a complete piece of shit, but I'm going to get better. I got to do it.
If you keep doing it, you're going to get better. And so
you finish this film, you put it together, you shoot it, and all of a sudden now here I am with this film.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck do you do with it? Where did you go with this? Like, how did you take it from this finished product to where it is now on Amazon, which everybody can stream?
You can stream right now. You can also go to Tubi, Tubi, and stream it for free. I think for me, it was I talk about this all the time, but I had this vision board, man, where it was called Hitting 30 at the time, on the board. And then I had ABFF, Grand Jury Prize winner, on it. And then I also had Urban World. I had Urban World on it, Urban World Film Festival. And I also had AMC theaters. And then I had Netflix, like those.
All of this on the board.
On my vision board, man. So I would look at this shit. I looked at this thing. So I had this thing called an Hour of Power that I was really hardcore with, man. So I was just working on like my mind, body, and spirit every day for like an hour before my day started. And one of the things that I would do is I would stare at this. I would stare at those. I would stare at that part of my vision board with Hitting 30, and then I would just picture myself. I would picture myself at the award show for ABFF, getting into Urban World, taking pictures. I picture all of these things, man. And it was an experientialization, right? I was daydreaming, right? Like that's what, if you get nothing from, craft at like a place like Maggie's, it's just, you learn how to make dreams come true. Cause you literally, like, I daydreamed and I felt it with everything I had, man. And it was like, I would just picture myself sitting there, hearing my name called, jumping up in the air, hugging my dad, hugging Sesa, going up to the podium, giving a speech, talking about Peanut, all of these things. So I was experiencing this every day. It's for 2 years. Like I just was there for a year and a half, 2 years. I believe it was 2 years, just from the day I decided to do the film. And I think that was part of the direction, because now my mind, this thing called your RAS, your reticular activating system, is looking for any way unconsciously to kind of manifest this. You've made it a reality in your mind. So there's this thing there's this thing called structural tension, where your mind can't handle the fact that this thing you're daydreaming about is not real. So unconsciously, it has to look for ways to make it real to you. So I believe that's what was happening. So, what did we do? There's a couple, right? I submitted to ABFF. I submitted to Urban World, right?
You got to do those two things.
You got to do these fundamental things, right?
At the very least.
We, eventually we had a distributor who reached out to Netflix, right? So I get the call. My mom, our like household dog, had passed away. And my mom was having a rough way to go, and I was helping her with that. And I had gotten on the phone with her one day, and I was talking to her, and then I get this email, and it says ABFF, and I just fucking froze, man. I froze, and then Sesa, I believe, had to click on it because I was like, what? And it said congrats, because I've got so many. That's the other thing too, man. That's why I post all my film festival rejection letters and any kind of like perceived bad shit, because it's like you got to get used to it, and then to just see congratulations, and I just started crying, and then my mom's voice turned into Charlie Brown's teacher, like wah 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 wah, like literally that's what happened. And then we go to the festival, and we're there for the award show.
I mean, not only was it accepted into the festival, but you got nominated for Best Director.
We got nominated for Best Director. So on my thing it said Grand Jury Prize, Best Film. But this year, the Grand Jury Prize was for the Best Director. So, okay. So the Best Director, the Grand Jury Prize was $25,000 from Cadillac, the sponsor, whatever. So all we hear is, all I heard was, and the Grand Jury Prize, Best Director, completely blacked out, man. Completely blacked out. And I came to, because I could hear Cesa's Alyssa Ciccarello voice trained come just go, ah! And I was like, wait, what was going on? And then I was in Sasha's arms, Sasha Lewis, who thank God gained like 25 pounds from when we were in school, and he was able to like lift me up. And the crazy, and then the crazy thing was, so the whole day, Stacey's like, you got to call your dad. It's Father's Day. I was like, I'm not calling my dad until I find out about this award. And then I'm on the phone with my dad walking on stage, and
while you're walking up
on
to
the stage,
the award,
and I'm talking to him on the phone, and I'm just like, Daddy, we did it. We did it. And the gentleman from Cadillac held the phone, and then I got to give my speech, which was about 256 and Peanut and how to make a dream happen. And the crazy thing was, the reason why I wanted ABFF was because I had been to the festival a couple of times in the early 2000s when I was still working at the Board of Ed. I submitted like 3 films, each one getting rejected, and it was just such a fucking like beautiful place, like and it's the it's the pinnacle of Black filmmaking, So I was like, one day I'm gonna get in there. So that's why it was big for me. And then Urban World was huge because it's in my city. It was on 42nd Street at that AMC. And it also was when I was selling my DVDs. So after I left the Board of Education, I started selling. We made this film in like 2005 for like $300. So I was on the streets selling a DVD. I sold 3,000 of them, me and my boy Sean, in the streets.
Yeah, this thing called love.
Yeah. So we're selling them in the streets. And then we were selling outside of Urban World Film Festival, outside the Magic Johnson Theater, because we were like, oh, filmmakers come here. Like, people will buy it. And to just see all of these like beautiful people of all ethnicities walk into this film festival, celebrities, whatever, and just seeing the glass doors close repeatedly on me, I was just like, one day. And then the crazy thing is, not many films that get into ABFF also get into Urban World. So it was kind of like this, again, I believe, because it was like I was focusing on it, the idea that this film got into both festivals. And it was just this great night and again, the kind of drive, when you think about passion, part of it was, I just want my friends to get on. I want people to see how awesome my friends are, which is crazy because there was a moment when I booked Ink, because we were supposed to go on a month tour across the country to promote Bruce, where for a second I was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm going to do this Broadway thing, because I committed to doing Bruce. And in the back of my mind, I had all my people who I kind of decided I was going to do this for. And then, of course, cooler heads prevailed, and family and Taste was just like, you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, that's insane.
Can't say no to Broadway.
Yeah. And yeah, man.
You also submitted it to Sundance and did not get into Sundance. Right. And what you did to crash Sundance is, I think, a story that everybody needs to hear, because it was brilliant. It was courageous. It was brave. It was risky. So you get rejected from Sundance. So how'd you crash it?
I was at Sace and I was spending time at Lisa Lamartina's house, who, again, a Maggie alum. And
absolutely, shout out Lisa.
Shout out Lisa, my lady. The greatest family. So we was like, oh shit. It was the first time I was like, no, man, I think Bruce deserves to be there. So we came up with this thing called Crash Dance. And the idea was that, again, one of those things where two people have the idea at the same time. So Lisa was just, because we were like, how can we have a screening out there? So the idea at first was get a U-Haul, put chairs in the back of it, and then put a screen in the back of the U-Haul, and then we'll have like a mobile theater where people could sit down and watch our film, right? It's like, oh no, that's not gonna work. You probably have to get like fucking, permits and stuff. And then at the same time, it was like, why don't we get a Sprinter van, like one of those Mercedes like luxury Sprinter vans? So the idea was, and what we executed was, we drove to Vegas because the vans are cheaper down there. We got a van, a Sprinter van, like a 15-seater. We drove to Salt Lake City to one of Lisa's friends' houses, where we shipped these huge 3x5 magnets that said Bruce is an asshole on them with the information to watch to watch the movie. And we took these 3x5 magnets and put them on each side of the vehicle. And then what we did was we drove around Sundance and we put like water and popcorn and flyers to the film, because on the flyer to the film, we were like, if it's going to be a film festival, people have to be able to screen it. So we set up this online screening from like 2 p.m. to like midnight, or it was like 6 p.m. to like 2 a.m. where people could watch the film. So it was a film festival. And then what we did was, because we realized that Sundance in Park City, that all the screening centers are far apart. So a lot of people use transportation. So we were just driving to bus stops anywhere, picking up people. And then we had this 32-inch screen that was showing Bruce. So people could sit there and watch Bruce. And then we were meeting like.
So you were a free shuttle service to anybody that wanted to climb in to your rented Mercedes van.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And they watched Bruce for however long they were in.
That's right. Or sometimes what would happen is people missed the screening, or the screening was too packed. So they would hop in the van. We would pull into like a gas station, into our headquarters. Yeah, that was our headquarters.
Did anything come of that? Anybody pop in that van? You're like, holy shit, I can't believe you're sitting here. Or...
Oh yeah, a lot like producers that were still in contact with the lawyers for our film. The lawyers that ended up being the lawyers for Bruce represented 14 films at Sundance, and ours was one of them.
Because they get in the van, they watch a little bit, they say, "This is brilliant what you guys are doing," and yeah. I want to be involved.
Yeah, man. So we just and people were coming in. One of the producers from Idris Elba's film that he directed that was out there, her and the lead from the film just drove with us like all day because they couldn't get in their joint, and it became really cool. And they watched the majority of the movie in the van. And so yeah, man.
I just think it's so great, man. Such a great story.
Yeah. And I think that comes from just I feel like that just comes from when you feel like you're doing things for others. Sometimes we get lost, and it's still effective, but you get lost in the idea of oh, I'm doing this for my own personal enjoyment. You're just willing to do more. It's kind of a human directive. It's kind of evolution. It's evolution. It's just I'm trying to keep humanity alive, so I'm looking out for my fellow man. So I feel like that is a motivator that gets overlooked when you when you feel like you're doing things for others, or you're doing things for the greater good in some way, whatever twisted way it is in your mind. You're just gonna do more. You're gonna risk more because it's not about just you. And I think
you did something else that I thought I respected a lot. Was it the Hollywood Reporter that totally ripped up Bruce? Was that the review? Because you posted it. I mean, but you posted it. You know what I mean? Most people would be so devastated by that. Not to say that you probably weren't. You know what I mean? But to just put that out there and say, "Hey, listen, this also happened."
Yeah.
Can I? I just wanted to ask you, why did you do that? Why did you decide to post that? It was brutal.
It was brutal, man. And it wasn't just the Hollywood Reporter. It was Hollywood Reporter. It was the LA Times. Yeah. It was Variety. Because I feel like it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's important. It's important that what perceived failures are posted. Because then I could also say oh yeah, how many people been reviewed by Hollywood? How many people have had a film that has a production value of $2,500 has been reviewed of a Hollywood Reporter or Variety? For me, it's just a
badge of honor.
Yeah. And it's also, and at first I was like, oh yeah, what up? But then it's so, man, so what? It's an opinion. It's, right. and it's also too, part of it could be oh yeah, the movie sucked. The other part of it could be people just don't understand. Part of it could be somebody's own inherent bias that they're not aware of. For me, it's just really important to post what people perceive are failures so that you keep going, because there's no other way. There's no other way to get better.
No success is built without a foundation of failure.
That's it. And that's kind of like
built on that.
Like if I was to write a book someday or do a podcast or something like that, it would be called Failure, the Only Road to Success. And I feel like that's
you got to copyright that.
Yeah. So I feel like that's what I feel like it's very important for me to show when things don't go the way you want it, so that people don't do the Michael Jordan thing. They don't see all the shots that he missed. You know, like I want that to be very clear, so people could look at the thing. Well,
you know, well, you talk about, and I'm interrupting you. Sorry, that's my poor interviewing skills at play right there.
Not at all. Yeah,
you just talked about things not going your way, and it just made me think like the times we're in right now. Right, we're in this pandemic. Our lives have been thrown completely, off balance. Everyone's dealing with some serious life issues, right? Saving your life and how to survive, and how do you stay creative? How are you finding and holding on to the artist in you right now while, our lives are being completely just.
Oh man, this is when they need us, man. This is when they need us. It's like, I'm not, I'm not an essential worker. I'm not, I'm not EMT. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a policeman. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not any of those things. But what I've been pounding at for years is telling stories. And I believe in my heart that one of the reasons why we've evolved so quickly and that we are where we are right now because of story. So I don't know if anybody's ever read Sapiens by Yuval Harari. No, Yuval Harari.
Great book.
It's a great book. But when he talks about gossip, and gossip being one of the main reasons why we were able to evolve so quickly. The idea that once you get past a tribe of 150, chimps and great apes, they fall apart, because after you get past 150, you don't know who you can trust. You don't know, you don't know who has your back and who doesn't. What makes our version different is we have gossip. We can ask somebody, hey, is that person, this person gonna be cool with my kids? Because we're all trying to live. We're all trying to write. We're all trying to grow the human race. So that's what stories are. That's what stories are. Stories are gossip. Stories about drama. Stories are about telling you the right and wrong thing to do. Stories about inspiring people. And now for like the last 70 years, this is a generalization, but people have been able, especially here, people have been able to tell stories that have like dark, tragic endings and are about tragic characters. And I finished watching the movie and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Where's the hope? But now we're at a time where we don't have that advantage. We don't have that entitlement, because fucked up shit actually is hitting close to home for some of us. And now is the time for It's a Wonderful Life. Now is the time, right? Like Capra makes that when he's making propaganda films for the government, and he's filming concentration camps, and he comes back home and is like, I will never do anything like this. I'm going to put love into the world. So then you get a masterpiece like It's a Wonderful Life. Now is the time for us, for creators, to just say, man, we're here to spread hope. That's what.
Yeah, but how do you intervene with? And I'm dealing with this right now with my students who are, struggling. They're unemployed, right? They're worried about their rent. They're worried about how they can survive in New York City. How am I going to pursue my career? Like, how do you intervene? What's your advice to people that are struggling right now and feeling, well, what's the fucking point? Because there are a lot of people out there like, well, what's the fucking point? I'm trying to survive, understand. Right?
Yeah.
How do you combat that?
I think for me, it's trying your best, even though it's really hard, and even though you're going to fail at it a million times, is trying to connect yourself to a greater purpose, right? I was reading in Grit, Angela Duckworth, earlier today, and she was saying how there's a story about a bricklayer, and there are these three bricklayers, and you ask the first bricklayer, what do you do? He's like, hello, I lay bricks. You ask the second bricklayer, what are you doing? Oh, I'm building a church. You ask the third bricklayer, what are they doing? I'm building a house of God. And the idea, that's the difference. That's like this, the difference between having a job, having a career, and having a calling. And when you feel like, even after you have to trick yourself, if you feel like you have a calling, maybe there are a couple hours of the day that you can take out, right? You feel the best in your life when you're volunteering. Like when I volunteer at like God's Love We Deliver, or I'm helping somebody out. You have this oxytocin, right? This heart hormone that gets transmitted to you. So you're doing good for the other person. They feel great. And at the same time, you feel great. Because again, we're trying to grow the human race. So if you can start to look at this thing that you're doing as important, not only for your own enjoyment, but for the greater good, you'll be motivated. You're still going to think about the other things, but there might be an hour. It might start off with being only 15 minutes in the day where you can say, okay, I'm going to do something today because it's not just about me. I'm trying to cheer somebody up. I'm trying to give somebody else hope. So for me, we're making like this quarantine film right now where we're making a feature film in quarantine, where we have about 11 stories that are interweaved with the other ones. And the reason for doing that is twofold. One is just to try to inspire other artists that we can still make things, right? Even like we can't be stopped. And then secondly, Claire Gansford, who's also a Maggie alum, I had this idea of making this thing. Then she hits me up with an email asking me about it. And then like saying that she has like an idea she wants to do. I was like, okay. And then I sent her email and I was like, look, I really love to do this. I actually am working on something now, but I got to work on these other projects. And then she hit me with another email like a week later. And I was like, okay, universe, I'm listening. I'm just going to make this. We're going to make this thing. And the goal is very simple. It's just to give people hope, to let them know that they're not alone. And when this thing is over, right, or even during it, we can still live our lives. And finally, it's a tribute to my boy, Jared Sockwell, who passed away last month from COVID. So all those things. And I feel like if you can make it bigger than yourself, if you can make it about somebody, you could have if you could have somebody that would, you're threatening their life or whatever. Would you jump over, would you jump into that pit right now? Like, no, we'll never do that. But then you say to them, okay, it's you or your kid, or it's you or your partner, or it's you or your best friend, or it's you or this. Then they're like, all right, fine, I'll jump. That's why it's important and why it gets overlooked to try to make things about more than yourself. So if you make this about other people, about your craft, about whatever, you're just going to be more inclined to do it, and you just be more motivated.
This is why I wanted to have you on. This is why I wanted to talk to you, man. You are a source of inspiration. I love you. And, this is just great. Now we're going to wrap this up, but before we go, I'm going to give you a little quiz.
Oh, okay. Here we go. All right.
I'm going to give you a quiz. Let's see what you remember. Let's see what you come up. What is the definition of acting?
Oh my gosh. I'm so scared. I can't even think straight. The definition of acting is doing. I was like doing under imaginary circumstances.
That's right. Out. No, that's it. That's it. You got it. The ability to do truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Under imaginary circumstances.
Well, where's your placement of concentration?
On the other actor.
Where should it never be?
On yourself, which is also good for life. It can get you out of being anxious. Yeah.
Amen. What's the smallest unit of acting?
What's the smallest unit?
Yeah. You can break down a script, right? Into acts, into scenes, into beats. No, the smallest unit.
The beats? Huh? Oh, a beat.
Don't take advice from Stacey. She's wrong.
Yeah, she's wrong. Wait. I'm like, why don't
you can break a scene into a beat, and then what do you break?
A moment. Yes. And then it's like the pearl. It's like a pearl. It's like each pearl is a moment on the necklace.
That's right. You're stringing pearls.
For some reason, I don't know. I just don't remember hearing it like that. I'm sorry.
Unanticipated moment to unanticipated moment.
Unanticipated moment.
You weren't listening in class? You'll never work in this business, Eden.
Ever. I might have missed that class.
Listen, man. I just want to thank you for doing this.
Thank
We
you.
talk, we've talked for a long time here. This is great.
It's been fun.
So Bruce, we can watch Bruce on Amazon. You can stream it for free where?
You can stream it for free on Tubi, which I would encourage everybody to do since money's tight right now.
Absolutely.
TUBI on the app or even just online. You can watch it for free. It has commercials though.
And just watch a good film. Watch what passion, love, determination, and grit can produce, man.
Let's get it.
Listen, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And tell Sesa that she's been banging around her spoons and her fucking cups for the last hour and 43 minutes. And it sounds like a diner, okay? So
he says it sounded like a diner in here for the last hour and 43 minutes. Banging your spoons and your fucking cups.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Listen, Eden. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I love you, man.
Likewise. All right, take care.
All right, you got it. Solo.
Listen, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you for keeping the phone in your pocket, sticking it out with me. That was a long episode. Subscribe, please, to this podcast on any of the platforms that you are listening to it. You can check out any of the links to the art, the artists, the guests on every episode at creatingbehaviorpodcast.com. You can email me all of your questions, concerns, comments. Charlie at creatingbehaviorpodcast.com. Lawrence Trailer, thank you for the music. Listen, my friends, we are still just in precarious times, right? We are on an emotional roller coaster. Be creative when you can. Be good to yourself. And really, don't ever fucking settle for your second best. I'm Charlie Sandlan. Peace.